Hi everyone, I'm Bia, and welcome back to Cardiac Radio for Teens. For those of you who might not be familiar with Cardiac Radio for Teens, this is a place where teens can talk with other teens about Spiritist teachings and topics in a way that relates more to us as teenagers in today's society, and also in ways that these lessons make more sense to us into what we're living right now. For months now, we have been going through the Spirits book together, and we've been reading it page by page, sentence by sentence, question by question, and we've been going through it and not only just reading it really quick, but understanding it and understanding what they're saying. And I would highly suggest that if you ever miss one here and there, to go back and listen to it, because it makes more sense when you're learning all the information in the order they put it in, because they put stuff that's essential in the beginning so that later on you'll be able to understand more about more difficult topics because you have that beginning knowledge. Also, if you guys do have some free time ever, especially now that it's almost the summer vacation, if you want to go back and listen to prior ones, because we've come so far, like we're on question 267, so who remembers question 39 or 40 or 50? So if you go back and maybe refresh your brain on those questions, because there's always something new to learn. So maybe when you hear it again, you'll learn something that you didn't even think of before, or you'll relate to something now that wasn't happening to you before when we went over those questions in the beginning. So it's good to keep up and refresh with the other questions, not just say, oh, okay, I did it, I never have to look at it again. So last week we left off in the middle of a section in the chapter Spirit Life, and this section is called Choice of Trials. So we were talking about the trials that the spirits face when incarnated and how they decide them and how and what their consequences are, and all of that revolving around the choices of their trials. So we left off on question 267. Can a spirit choose its next corporeal life during its present one? So the question is, can the spirit, right now, during our corporeal life, so corporeal is like incarnated right now, and so can we pick what's going to happen in our next life? And the spirits answered, its desire may have influence, depending on its intention. In the spirit state, however, it frequently sees things quite differently. It is the spirit, as such, that makes the choice. But even so, it may make it during the material life, because the spirit always has a moment in which it is independent of the matter it inhibits. So what the spirits basically said is that sometimes we might have, okay, I want to do this. So you're not really thinking, I'm going to exactly do this, but you have an idea of something that you want to do. But when you're in the spirit state, when you're not incarnated, then you see things differently, because you're looking at all of these lives. You're not just looking at one life. Because when on a physical planet like we are right now, that's very material, we're only thinking about this one life right now. But when you are in the spiritual world, you're looking at a bigger picture. So you might see things differently. So it's really that when you're in the spirit world that you decide. But they said, we do have moments here on earth, in our case right now, we have moments on earth that we aren't attached to material and we're thinking beyond just this life right now. So maybe that can influence us, but mostly it's in the spirit state. And then there's a second part to the question, and it says, don't many individuals desire greatness and wealth, but not as an expiation or a trial? So they're saying, don't a lot of people, don't they just wish to be wealthy? And they're not trying to learn from being wealthy, they just want to be wealthy. And the spirit said, undoubtedly, it is the flesh that desires greatness and wealth in order to enjoy them, but it is the spirit who desires them in order to experience the tribulations they can cause. So what they're saying is that, of course, people just want wealth. They don't want to learn from it, but they want to be wealthy. They want to have money. But they say that it's the flesh, it's this physical body that we have that wants the wealth and the greatness, that wants to enjoy that. But the spirit's thinking more about learning from that, because we know in the spirit world we're not going to have money and we're not going to have material things and cars and houses. like we do now. So the spirit is the one thinking about the trials and what we're going to learn from it. But when you're in a physical body, it's more of just physical things, physical wealth, and physical greatness. Question 268. Until it reaches the state of perfect purity, does the spirit have to constantly undergo trials? The spirits answered, yes, but they are not as you understand them. You call material tribulations trials. Even though it may not be perfect, a spirit who reaches a certain degree does not have any more trials to endure. However, it always has non-suffering duties consistent in helping others to improve themselves. This, in turn, will help it evolve further. So, the question here was asking, so until you're completely perfect, are you going to keep going under trials? New trials, new trials, new trials, until you're finally perfect? And they said, yeah, but not the way we're thinking of it. The way we're thinking of it, we're thinking of material trials that we have to keep going. But for the spirits, maybe, okay, if they went through some trials like wealth, like we were talking about, maybe poverty, maybe race, a whole bunch of different trials. So they went through these trials, and they're not perfect yet, but they don't have to go through trials now that are going to make them suffer. Because usually when we think of trials, we're thinking about, okay, this is going to be really hard, it's going to be painful, we're going to suffer, and then hopefully we can overcome it. But that doesn't have to be the case. Like they said, it can be non-suffering duties, like, oh, the trial of helping others. So you just have to help. It's not something that's going to be causing you pain the way we might think of it. Question 269. Can a spirit be mistaken as to the effectiveness of a trial it chooses? The spirits answered, it may choose one that exceeds its strength, and then it succumbs. It may also choose one that will not be profitable at all. For example, a kind of idle and useless life. In such a case, however, upon returning to the spirit world, it realizes that it had gained nothing and asks to make up for the lost time. So here the question is talking about, okay, so we're in the spirit world and we see all the mistakes we've made. And we said, okay, I want to fix this and this and this and this. And sometimes we are mistaken of how much we're actually trying to take on. So sometimes it's too hard and we're not ready for that. So we're not gonna overcome it in the lifetime like we thought we were. Or sometimes we're gonna say, oh, maybe I'll work on this because I improved a little bit, but not a lot. So maybe they're picking smaller trials. And so when they disincarnate and get back to the spirit world, they're going to realize that, wow, I didn't really overcome anything because these weren't really big trials for me to overcome. So they kind of just stayed in the same place. Like they said, it was like a useless life. They kind of just stayed in the same state. They didn't go backward. They didn't get worse, but they didn't improve either. But eventually, when they get back to the spirit world, they realize, okay, I made a mistake with the trials. I need to pick more appropriate trials and make up for the lost time that I just spent, because rather I picked a trial that was too hard for me at the moment, or I didn't pick hard enough trials and I didn't actually improve that much. Question 270. Why do persons have certain vocations or the desire to follow one's career instead of another? So here the question asking, why do people have the desire for like certain jobs, certain careers instead of another? And the spirit said, it seems to me that you can answer this question yourselves. Isn't it the result of everything we have said about the choice of trials and the progress accomplished in a preceding existence? So what the spirit's saying is, they didn't give an answer, but they're saying, we've basically already answered this, they said. So they're saying that when we were talking about before, they say, go back on everything we've said about choices of trials. So we know that it's about the spirit's free will. First off, we talked a lot about that. It's the free will. So maybe the spirit wants to try this, or maybe the spirit made a mistake. And now, to fix that mistake, they're going to go into that career so that'll be a good setting for them to fix that mistake. So there's a lot of reasons, and it's more on a case-to-case basis. There's not just a this and this and this. So depending on maybe something you're trying to overcome, something you're trying to fix, something you want to learn more about, and it's your free will too. Question 271. When a spirit in the errant state studies the conditions that will enable it to progress, how could it possibly imagine it could do so by being born among cannibals? The spirits answered, Spirits who have already advanced are not born among cannibals, though only those of the same nature as cannibals, or those who are even less evolved. So, what they're saying is, how can spirits, when they're kind of deciding what they're going to do, and the conditions that they're going to have to go through, how can they possibly think of doing that, and like they said, being born amongst cannibals? So basically, the spirits are sitting there and they're saying, wow, how am I actually going to be improved while in that place, in that location? And the spirits were saying that those who are not so advanced, or who are the same nature, or are less evolved, those are the ones that are going to be born in worse conditions. But the spirits who have already advanced some, they're not going to be born, like they said, amongst cannibals. They're not going to be born into complete decivilization. They're going to have the right conditions to help them overcome what they need to overcome, their trials. And then Allan Kardec put in his own comment, and he says, we know that our cannibals are not at the lowest degree of the scale, in that there are worlds where brutality and ferocity have no comparison on earth. Such spirits are therefore even less evolved than the least evolved on our world. So what they're saying is, if we're thinking about right now on Earth we can say, okay, people who are cannibals, who are eating other people and doing terrible things, we can say that they're the worst in our worlds, but other worlds are even worse than that. So they're worse than what we consider our worst. Then it continues, to be among our cannibals is progress for them, just as it would be progress for our cannibals to exercise a profession among us that would require them to shed blood. If they aim no higher, it is because their moral impurity does not allow them to comprehend a more complete progress. A spirit cannot advance except gradually. It cannot simply leap over the gap between barbarity and civility. In this resides one of the necessities of reincarnation, truly showing it to be in accord with God's justice. Otherwise, what would become of the millions of beings who die every day in the ultimate stage of degradation if they had no means of lifting themselves out of it? Why would God withhold from them the favors granted to others? So something very important that I saw that they were saying is that it's besides our free will. We do have our free will, but also God is permitting us. It's all within what God wants for us. Everything that happens, it's all in accordance with God's justice and what He wants. And also that spirits, they need to progress gradually. We're not just going to be like they're talking about cannibals. They're not going to be cannibals one day and then not the next. They need to slowly get out of that stage. So maybe they have to incarnate in that area as that kind of person, or in that kind of job, whatever it may be. They might have to incarnate there so they can keep gradually overcoming it, because they can't just say, oh no, I don't want to do that, skip. You can't just do that. So it's a gradual process, and eventually the spirits will get there. Question 272. Can spirits who come from a world that is less evolved than Earth, or from a much less advanced people, such as cannibals, be born among civilized people? So they're saying, so people who are like for us, cannibals, like very low class people, or less advanced than everyone else, or people from other planets that are far much less advanced than us, can they be born amongst civilized people just all of a sudden? And the spirits answered, yes. There are those who go astray by wanting to ascend too quickly, but they are out of place among you. They display habit and instincts that clash with yours. So they said, yeah, there's some spirits who, maybe they're, like we were talking about, spirits who don't see how much they're actually taking on until they actually do it. So maybe they're taking on a lot and they want to advance really quickly, so they say, okay, put me there. And then they're gonna clash with the other people. They're not gonna actually fit in as well as they might have thought they would. And Allan Kardec puts his own comment in, and he says, such beings present us with a sad spectacle of ferocity in the midst of civility. Returning to live among cannibals would not be a regression for them, because it would be no more than a resumption of their proper place, even perhaps with some advantage. So what they're saying is that for these people, maybe going to civility, just jumping straight to civility, wouldn't be right. They wouldn't be able to improve, to be advanced. They would not be in harmony with everyone else. So, but returning to live among cannibals, that's not like they're going backwards. They're not getting worse. They might be on the better stage of almost overcoming that stage instead of all the way at the beginning. And they'll be able to learn more when we're kind of taking baby steps, like they said, gradually, not just trying to jump over a bunch of things. Question 273. Could a person belong to a civilized culture reincarnate into a less advanced one as an expiation? So they're saying, so someone who is in a civilized culture, could they reincarnate into one that's less? So not a trial, but an expiation, like trying to help people or with a mission. And the spirits answered, yes, but it would depend on the kind of expiation. Masters who have been cruel to their servants might become servants themselves and suffer the harsh treatments they used to inflict on others. Those who gave orders at one time might, in a new existence, obey those who formerly bent to their will. This would be an expiation if used to abuse the power, and God can impose it on them. Furthermore, a good spirit may choose an influential life amongst such culture to enable it to advance. In that case, it is a mission. So right here, they're saying, basically, if we're being very generic, there's kind of two ways that this happens. Sometimes it's to learn from the mistakes that we made. So, like they were saying, like the master to the servants. Maybe the master was terrible and he was very rude and mean and always mistreating them. So now, to make up for that mistake he made, he's going to come back as a servant to live that life and see what it's like. And another way that this could happen also could be that maybe the spirit chooses, oh, I want to go into a less advanced part so I can help them. So I can help them advance. And that would be a mission. That part right there where they're helping those people advance, that would be a mission. So now we're on to the next part of this chapter, and it's called Relationships Beyond the Grave. Question 274. Do the different orders of spirits establish a hierarchy of power, and is there subordinate in authority among them? So they're saying the different order of spirits, is there a hierarchy of powers? Is there one that's more powerful, and is there one that has more authority? And the spirits answered, very much so. Spirits have authority over one another relative to their degree of evolution, and exert it through an irresistible moral ascendancy. So, yeah, there is this scale. The ones who are higher have more authority over the others. So, like, us as teenagers, we have authority over little kids. Say, if we have little siblings, we're the one in charge. But our parents, our teachers, are still in charge of us. And maybe, like, if we're talking big, like, the boss is still in charge of our parents, and the government is still in charge of the boss. So it depends on where you are, but you still have some influence on those people. So it's the same with spirits. If the spirits are more evolved, then they can influence and kind of have authority over whoever's below them. And depending where you are, there might be more or less spirits less evolved than you. And then there's a second part to this question, and it says, can low-order spirits evade the authority of those who are more evolved? And the spirit said, I said, irresistible. So the question was saying, so can a low-order spirit, can they say, no, I don't want to listen to you, like, just because you're more evolved, I don't want to listen to you? Can they say that? And they said, and the spirit said, I said, irresistible, so you can't resist it. Question 275. Do the power and influence that individuals enjoy on earth warrant them any supremacy in the spirit world? So the question is saying, so people who have power and who have influence here on earth, when they go to the spirit world, do they have some power and influence too? And the spirits answered, no, because the lowly will be exalted, and the great will be abased. Read the Psalms. So what they said here was, no, the ones who have power and influence here on earth aren't going to have power and influence in the spirit worlds, because the ones who are lowly and who, so on the lower side of, like, let's say social class, and didn't have much power, if any, on earth, they will be exalted. So they're going to be in high places because maybe they worked more on their moral qualities. And the great, who maybe they were spoiled and they did incorrect things, and they were just looking, they just had greed, they were just looking for wealth, they're gonna have to learn from those, and they're gonna have to go down to a lower level, let's say, not having that much power and influence, to learn from their mistakes. And then there's a second part to the question, and it says, how should we understand this exalting and abasing? The spirits answered, don't you already know that spirits are of different orders according to their merits? Well then, the greatest on earth may be in the last class among the spirits, while their servants may be the first. Don't you understand this? Didn't Jesus say, whoever humbles himself shall be exalted, and whoever exalts himself shall be humbled? So, whoever is humble now, they're going to be exalted. They're going to be put in a better place. They'll have more authority. They'll be happy. But whoever exalts now on earth, whoever's trying to put himself in a higher place now on earth and try and have power and control people, then he's going to have to be humbled. He's going to have to go down to a normal class like everyone else, and to actually understand what everyone else is going through and not be so greedy and powerful. And like they said, so the greatest on earth right now could be the last ones in the spirit, the last class in spirits, and vice versa. And although it may be hard for many people to believe this, but wealth is actually one of the hardest trials to overcome because of this power and greed that comes from it. Question 276. Don't those who were great on earth but find themselves abased among the spirits feel humiliation? The spirits answered, of course, they almost always feel greatly humiliated, especially if they had been proud or jealous. So they're saying here that spirits who had so much power and wealth and thought they were the best on earth, when they get to the spirit world and they're in maybe the lowest class or in a lower class than a lot of other people, they'll be humiliated. They'll feel embarrassed because of how much pride they had in them that they were so powerful. Question 277. After a battle, does a soldier who meets his general in the spirit world still acknowledge him as his superior? So, after a battle, let's say, and the soldier and the general die, so now they're in the spirit world. So, of course, the soldier is lower than the general. And of course, he has to treat his general with such respect. So now that they're in the spirit world, does the soldier still see him as more powerful than him, or are they now treated equally? And the spirit said, "The title is nothing. True superiority is everything." So the title doesn't mean anything, because if you were a general now, maybe the soldier was a general in a different life. The general title isn't going to mean anything, but it's what's really behind that. Maybe if the general actually was doing a lot of good things and he is more evolved, then he will be above, more superior. So that's where we'll leave off today. But before we leave off, I'd like to read our message from the Daily Book of Positive Quotations. For today's date, June 13th. New worlds. Each friend represents a world in us, a world possibly not born until they arrive. Our friends are not all the same, and hooray for that. One friend brings out our athletic side. We run or go to the gym together. Another sharpens our intellect with debate and discussions. Yet another is our favorite companion for going to the movies or out to dinner. Our friends are both like us and not like us, and it is the ways they are not like us that stimulates and awakens the new possibilities in ourselves. I am lucky to have friends who help me be more interesting and more active than I would be without them. If at all you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, want to go over anything in more detail, feel free to contact me at kardecradioforteens@gmail.com. I'm Bia, and this is Kardec Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening. This has been Kardec Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.